The Fox Propaganda Network is whining that President Biden publicly trolled Donald Trump into agreeing to two presidential debates, one on CNN and another on ABC, even as a desperate Trump tried to break the deal by sliding in a third debate on, you guessed it, the Fox Propaganda Network. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video, starting with this one here, which was surprising, quite frankly. It was from President Biden. It's about 15 seconds long, in which he agrees to and offers his own terms for a debate or a series of debates with Donald Trump after Donald Trump famously said, anytime, anywhere, any place.
Donald Trump lost two debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Now, that, of course, was a jab at Trump because he's not in court on Wednesdays. Again, great stuff. It shows the aggressive rhetorical posture from President Biden, which I and others love. We don't think that Biden is obligated to, wage a rhetoric war with Trump with the kid gloves on. He's entitled to call Donald Trump names and insults, especially when they're accurate, like loser and fascist. However, the Fox Propaganda Network disagreed. They're clutching their pearls at this. They're so upset with Biden's aggressive rhetoric, and they think that sort of thing is really beneath the office of the president, if a Democrat is the president.
I will say what I found most deeply disheartening from my commander-in-chief as he exploits the fact that a former president is in a criminal trial, the free on Wednesdays. It is all so sad to me because this is a president who promised us unity. He promised us he would be the adult in the room. He promised us he would behave commensurate with the office and, in his words, unlike his predecessor. And now we are getting someone that is taking glee over another human, a former president who is subjected to criminal charges. That's unacceptable to me. The plain comment, that's a funny quip. Go ahead. That's sort of campaign-like. Otherwise, no.
Very gracious of her. We'll get to the plain comment. But of course, again, this Fox News host is imposing wildly different standards on President Biden compared to Donald Trump. Well, they were both president, and both of them had an obligation to behave with civility, with unity, right? This idea that only Democrats are obligated to try to unite the country, whereas Republicans can say or do whatever they want, no matter how divisive, is insane. The same standards apply to both Biden and Trump. And if Trump's going to flagrantly violate the decorum that we typically associate with the office of the presidency, then it's okay for President Biden to start throwing a jab or two, because I would argue he hasn't gone anywhere near as far as Trump has in terms of incivility and lack of decorum or breaches of decorum. Okay, he is just beefing up the rhetoric. He's calling Donald Trump for what he is, a fascist loser. But again, the Fox Propaganda Network can't handle that. This is why, folks, I say you and I are not obligated. We are not obligated to adhere to an asymmetry of civility, to double standards of civility. What the Republican Party wants, what the American right wants, what the MAGA movement wants, what Donald Trump wants is the ability to say anything about anybody at any time, no matter how cruel. Think of all the terrible things that MAGA has said about liberals, progressives, people in blue cities, blue states, women, marginalized groups, minorities, the disabled, the media. They want to be able to do all of that, and they can't handle a fraction of it in return, a fraction, no matter how richly deserved. That's what they want. So when they demand civility, when they clutch their pearls like this, make fun of them, laugh at them, and demand if they really want civility, then they have an obligation to impose civility on Donald Trump. That Fox News host is obligated to say, Donald Trump, stop behaving so incivilly, stop behaving in ways which breach decorum. You are not above those standards. But of course, he is to them because they're a cult. So go ahead and make fun of them. Now, before I play some other clips here, to provide some context to what President Biden said in his 15-second announcement video, both Biden and Trump are done with the Presidential Debates Commission. Okay, so President Biden's campaign chair, Jen O'Malley, said, cited the commission's proposed schedule and past struggles to keep candidates from violating the debate rules in the letter explaining their decision to no longer follow the Presidential Debates Commission. The commission's model of building huge spectacles with large audiences at great expense simply isn't necessary or conducive to good debate. The debates should be conducted for the benefit of the American voters, watching on television and at home, not as entertainment for an in-person audience with raucous or disruptive partisans and donors who consume valuable debate time with noisy spectacles of approval or jeering. Biden proposed that the moderator should be selected by the broadcast host from its regular personnel with firm time limits for answers, equal speaking time, alternative turns to speak, and microphones that are active only during each candidate's turn. Americans need a debate on the issues, not a tedious debate about debates. And also in terms of the roster, they said, listen, we should be as nonpartisan as possible. So it should come from a network that President Biden debated on during the 2020 election cycle and that Donald Trump debated on from 2016. So where there's agreement between those two things, where both candidates have done the stuff in the past, then from there, you can pick, we know that we can agree on two networks with their hosts. And so with that in mind, then we get back to Biden's posturing and his rhetoric, which I love, and also the plain comment that the Fox host was complaining about there. So first, Biden says, I've received and accepted an invitation from CNN for a debate on June 27th. Over to you, Donald. As you said, anywhere, anytime, any place. Both he and former President Trump have debated on CNN in the past. Trump in 2016, Biden in 2020. So this is that overlap, and Trump accepted. Then President Biden said, I've also received and accepted an invitation to a debate hosted by ABC on Tuesday, September 10th. Trump says he'll arrange his own transportation. I'll bring my plane too. I plan on keeping it for another 4 years. That's the plain comment that the Fox News host graciously said that Biden was okay if Biden does that. Of course, it's a reference to Air Force One, the presidential plane. But then Trump tried to break the rules, folks. So he says, please let this truth serve to represent that I hereby accept debating crooked Joe Biden on Fox News. The debate will be Wednesday, October 2nd. The hosts will be Brett Baier and Martha McCallum. Thank you, Donald J. Trump. Now, that sounded quite odd, given that Biden made clear in his terms 2 debates. Well, this would have been the 3rd. That doesn't make any sense. And it turns out it's because Biden never agreed to that. That was Trump's desperate attempt to try to get a favorable platform. He was already breaking the terms of the deal. So this is what Jen O'Malley, again, President Biden's campaign chair, had to say in response to this. Donald Trump has a long history of playing games with debates, complaining about the rules, breaking those rules, pulling out at the last minute, or not showing up at all, which he's done repeatedly in all 3 cycles he's run for president. He said he would debate President Biden anytime, anywhere, any place. In fact, he said and posted it dozens of times with varying degrees of comprehension and basic grammar. President Biden made his terms clear for 2 one-on-one debates, and Donald Trump accepted those terms. No more games, no more chaos, no more debate about debates. We'll see Donald Trump on June 27th in Atlanta if he shows up. Folks, I love this. This is the energy that Biden should be bringing to this. He dictates the terms. He's the president. He's the most powerful man on earth. He is the man that Donald Trump wants to be because he occupies the office Donald Trump desperately wants. And Joe Biden was the one to kick him out of that office in the first place. We need this posture from the Democrats. Carefully, thoughtfully, strategically. And we'll get to that in a second. But yes, Biden is the GOAT here. Biden is the powerful one here. Trump is a wannabe. And that's exactly how Biden should be treating him. We're not debating this. I'm the president. You're not. You said anytime, anywhere, any place. So your terms have been considered. You just didn't offer any. I set terms, reasonable terms. You agreed to those terms. Then you tried to break the deal. We're not doing this. This isn't a negotiation. I'm better than you, and you will adhere to my conditions. Love that posture from Biden. Now, in response, what can we expect to hear from the president? So I'm going to play some clips from 2 of President Biden's surrogates, his campaign advisors, and this is what they have to say.
I mean, Donald Trump says a lot of things. We'll see if he actually shows up. What the president communicated this morning, what this campaign is proposing is that we have 2 debates, one in June and one in September. I think we're ready to go. The American people deserve to see both of these candidates argue their case on the merits well before people actually go and cast their ballots. We believe that when people see Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, they'll be able to see the very stark choice between the president who's been fighting for the American people since the day he took office and Donald Trump, whose campaign of revenge and retribution will be on full display for the American people to see and reject once again. So we're excited to get this going.
So again, that's Michael Tyler, one of the one of the campaign advisors for President Biden, making a pretty compelling case. We're going to play 2 more clips as well, one from Michael Tyler, and another one from Quentin Fulks.
Now, listen, the reality here is that there are 2 candidates with a pathway to 270 electoral votes. That's President Joe Biden and that's Donald Trump. And the American people deserve to hear from them because that is the reality that we're facing. That is the choice in this election. So we should have a debate between the 2 candidates on the issues. Joe Biden will articulate his historic record of accomplishment, his vision for the future, and Donald Trump will go out here and try to explain why he's bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade, why he's trying to rebuild an economy that only works for rich people like himself, why he's trying to rule as a dictator on day one. That's the debate that the American people deserve to see in prime time, and that's what we're proposing.
So this is in response to, again, part of President Biden's terms are that they not waste their time with non-viable third-party candidates, people like RFK. And RFK Jr. is not happy about this at all. And listen, I agree. In a perfect world, in a better world, we would not have a duopoly. I do not like the duopoly. I wish we lived in a world where multiple parties had stood a greater chance of, even like in terms of coalition governments, right? So we see this in the United Kingdom, right, where very often the winning coalition has to make deals with other parties. But even then, it typically congeals into a left and right party, a center left, center right party, or center left and a far right party very often as well. And given the stakes, I absolutely don't think it's unreasonable at all for President Biden to say, listen, no matter what happens, no matter how much you all dislike me, I will always be a more viable candidate than RFK Jr., than Dr. Jill Stein, than Dr. Cornel West. So there's no point in having them on stage because it's either going to be me or Donald Trump. And that is true. If President Biden were to slip into a coma today, he would still stand an infinitely greater chance of beating Donald Trump in November than Jill Stein, Dr. Cornel West, or RFK Jr. There's just no viable path in this system for a third-party candidate. And given that Donald Trump is a fascist who leads an authoritarian cult of personality with no limiting principle, again, I think it's perfectly reasonable for them to say, nope, it just needs to be between the two viable candidates. So whether or not this is a good idea, okay, this is where it's open to interpretation. So you have others say, listen, let's be clear about what happened over the past 4 hours. The Biden campaign just ate Trump's lunch and boxed him into exactly what they wanted. To be clear, the Biden camp believes that many voters haven't tuned into the actual choice they face and don't really believe that Trump is the GOP nominee. Putting them side by side on a stage clarifies that. None of this is mysterious. The Biden camp has explained all of it. Best provisions in Biden's proposal: cutting off the candidate's microphone when his time is up, the only way to ensure fair allocation of time. No live audience, a disruptive, irritating distraction. Many of us have advocated for these rules for years. I agree with all of this, by the way. The Biden campaign's stated theory of the case is that the race will change once voters realize it's really a choice between Biden and Trump. A June debate will try to make that happen earlier and will be an early test in that theory. So, on the one hand, very sound reasons for President Biden to have advocated for this, which is why he wants to get ahead of the calendar, so to speak, and start, tapering those choices down and really sealing it in for the American electorate. On the other hand, some people don't think that this debate should happen.
I myself would never recommend going on a stage with Donald Trump, but the president has decided that's what he wants to do. I think the format he is suggesting is a good one.
So that's former Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying that it's a bad idea to get on a stage with Donald Trump. And listen, I think there's merit to that argument too. Now, what's funny is people say, oh, Trump's such a good debater. He's not. If you actually watch Donald Trump's debates, he can't speak with any sort of clarity and cohesion on substance. He just meanders. You ask him about foreign policy. Some would say I'm just the best at foreign policy. Believe me, nobody has foreign policy quite like me. That's the tenor of his answers. He can't actually speak substantively about foreign policy. He can't point to Israel on a map or Ukraine on a map. He can't speak about their history, the political divisions within. He can't talk competently about that because that's not his area of expertise. And he hasn't, over the years he's been in public life, tried to educate himself on the subject. Now, President Biden is a career politician of 50 years. He used to serve on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, right? So he understands foreign and domestic policy and can speak substantively about it. But he is also a gaffe machine, right? So Trump being good at debate means that he will occasionally throw out a really good zinger. So, for example, when famously against Hillary Clinton, when they were talking about prisons and prosecutions, and he'd say, you would be in jail, right? That was seen as a funny comment, right? So there are some clever rhetorical moves that Trump is capable of. But in terms of engaging on substance, he's never been good at that. Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden are much, 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 much better on substance than Donald Trump. So the extent to which Trump's a good debater is that he's good at heckling and interrupting, right? Which is what he would try to do if the microphones are allowed to stay active all the time, because he can't compete with Biden on substance. So he would just try to throw Biden off his game with just, again, stuff from the peanut gallery, the way Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert do during the State of the Union. And maybe it would work, or maybe not, because Biden has shown himself to be competent at, redirecting that sort of energy, right? So who knows? I do understand that there's a risk here, right? Especially with Biden's verbal agility not being what it was in 2012. But listen, I think under this format, where there's no audience to heckle or to applaud or to take up time or to interrupt in any way, and the other person's microphone, including Biden's, by the way, when Trump is speaking, is not active, I think it will allow for a much more substantive, coherent debate, and that will only play in President Biden's favor. Let me know what you think in the comments.